So on paper, the brand new Pixel 10a looks like a bit of a nothing upgrade over the Pixel 9a, and to be honest, that isn't far off the truth. What is actually new in this device though, and has Google fumbled it? Well, let's get into it in this video. Rest assured though, we will be diving into all the details on the Pixel 10a and more in the coming weeks, so hit that subscribe button to be the first to see that when it drops. Cheers. So it's fair to say a lot of you are thinking that the Pixel 10a is a by the numbers revision, and yeah, that's pretty fair from the outside. It is more of the same, but is that strictly true? Well, yes, and a little bit no at the same time. I do think fine-tuning is great, but is it enough? Well, let's get into it slightly. The good news here is that there are upgrades. Like the display itself, it hasn't changed in size, but the bezels, they look marginally smaller. I don't know if that's actually true or not. It is brighter though at 3000 nits. It's up from 2700 nits peak brightness on the Pixel 9a, and the contrast ratio is now up to 2 million to 1, which means improvements for the brightest and darkest portions of your screen. Should mean that if you do happen to get into a situation where the phone is at its maximum brightness for a very small period of time, it's going to be more visible. I do think small improvements do help here, so yes, there's a change to the display, not drastically though. And Google has also ditched the Gorilla Glass 3 in favour of Gorilla Glass 7i, so it isn't the most durable, but to put it into perspective, the Pixel 4a was the first to use Gorilla Glass 3, so we've had, 7 or so iterations before this. That's been a long overdue change, and it should be great for preventing scratches on the screen. That said, you're probably going to put a screen protector on this anyway, so yeah, I do think that's good. No other changes to the display, but there are changes nonetheless. The kind of things that you'd expect from a cheaper phone like this. Visually, this phone looks the same as a 9a, but like the jump from the Pixel 9 to the Pixel 10, there are some really subtle differences. So the dimensions are 153.9 by 73 by 9mm, which means that the 10a is actually 0.1mm thinner, 0.8mm shorter, and 0.3mm narrower than the Pixel 9a, and it's doing that with a flush back plate for the camera, which I actually really like this change, as it's a marginally sleeker device than your typical Android phone now. And I do think it reminds me in a good way of the the iPhone 4 series. I'm going to call it Pixel, the iPhone series. Sadly though, Google has probably made their biggest fumble here by not making room for Pixel Snap. There are 0 magnets on this model, so that means you will need to get a case to stick your phone to other accessories you may have, which is sad, it's frustrating, but I have to say it's not unexpected. Some other good news though is that the Pixel 10a is 3 grams lighter than last year at 183 grams. I would say I don't think magnets would add extra weight, but yeah, it means there's no support for Qi 2. Wireless charging has improved though, so you get 10 watts for the Pixel 10a, which is up from 7.5 watts. It won't be much faster, but it will be a tad faster at the very least. Again, incremental gains. Does that mean fumble? We all know that the core internals are identical. I think this is the biggest kind of frustration point for the Pixel 10a. The Tensor G4 chip is available here. No, it does not have the latest Tensor G5 chip, which itself has its own criticisms. You get 8GB of RAM, which is the exact same, no bump there. Obviously, we have RAM costs, which are ballooning at the moment, so that could be a reason why that stayed the same. You get 128GB on the base model, and you have 256GB of storage. This is UFS 3.1 storage, not that faster UFS 4.0. So it means we should get the exact same performance as last year, which is to say it's going to be fine. You might not be doing lots of insane things on your phone, but I think for your mum or dad or a younger relative, heck, I do think most people will be adequately catered for. And if you have a Pixel 9 series, yeah, it's the same as that. It's a middle of the road, non-flagship set of specifications. This isn't a gaming phone, and it never will be. So I don't think they've fumbled there, but it is a bit confusing that we're using last year's chip. There is a new modem though, or at least a revised modem. So the Exynos 5300S, or I think it's S5300, I'm not actually sure, I'll put that on screen to confirm which one it is basically the same as last year in core, but it does have the ability here to use satellite SOS for the first time on an A-series device. That was previously limited to the Pixel 9 and the most recent Pixel 10 series, so it is a first here. It's great for A-series phones, and it's great for safety when off-grid or in a place with no carrier service, as it allows you to contact emergency services using localized satellite communications. Great for the kind of people who are going to go out there. The updated chip also supports Bluetooth 6 or 6.0. This allows for improved latency, increased bandwidth, and even precise distance measurement, which is great if you do want to use this as a digital car key or even locate trackers in your vicinity. It also handles high-res audio codecs better, something which has been a big problem on Android in general. This is arguably a big and welcome change. Another frustration here is that the camera hardware has not changed as well. So it's the exact same system as a 9A, which means 48 megapixel main sensor, 13 megapixel ultra wide, and that 13 megapixel selfie camera. So yeah, pretty much par for the course on a cheap phone. It means that phones and videos should be absolutely identical, and all of the core functions that you do get with that camera system are here. But, and here's a big but here, the Pixel 10a gets a few new tricks from the Pixel 10 series, despite the fact that it has a 9A system and the 9A isn't capable of these. You get Camera Coach. This is an AI-powered camera feature which gives you step-by-step guidance on how to take better photos with tips like framing, angle of the image, or adjusting things like the zoom level. I really like this, and I think it's great to have this, especially if you are going to sell AI as a feature. You can do things like get inspiration and the steps to help you recreate a photo based on those Gemini-powered tips. It might help those not confident in taking photos get better content, and as the Pixel is prided on its camera, it's nice to see this drip feed down to the A series. Another big change is the auto best take feature. So when it's enabled, this uses Top Shot and Best Take, which is available on the 9A, so that you can take things like group photos or a photo with 2 people or more, and you can choose the best facial expressions if someone's smiling and got their eyes closed, and fix that after the fact in the Photos application. So that means you can just make sure you have the best photo of everyone, and this is the first time that this automatic feature is here on the A series. Similar shots are needed on the 9A, so this basically streamlines that process and combines it with Top Shot, again, making it easier for the kind of people who don't necessarily or aren't necessarily confident with the camera. They can just get things done on the go. Macro focus is also available properly for the first time in the stills camera application. Oddly, it's worth noting that macro focus video was available last year on the 9A, but with the 10A, you get proper macro focus as a mode in the main camera. So you can get closer to your subject, get sharper close-up photos without a dedicated lens or a low resolution camera, which is usually what you get with these depth cameras, these macro cameras. So that's really, really good that you have this function and it drip feeds down for the Pixel 10 series. Neither of these are killer camera features, and I kind of think most people will never use Camera Coach, but I do think Macro Focus and Auto Best Take are at least useful additions to the kind of people who are going to be using this phone for a long time to come. As for the software, the Pixel 10a does ship with the latest version of Android 16, pre-installed with all of that Material 3 expressive goodness. We've talked about it at length on the channel. I'll leave a link down in the description to what is newer here and the kind of stuff you're going to enjoy. It should also be eligible in the coming weeks for the Android 17 beta, which should just drop, like I say, over the past few weeks. That's on top of that 7-year update plan, which is also included. All of this is still industry leading, and it's one of the best reasons and one of the major reasons a lot of people might look at this over other phones out there at similar price points. One function that has been added here is the ability to send files to iPhones with Quick Share. So this taps into AirDrop and allows you to send all of your files and your content to a Mac, an iPhone, or an iPad without wires. It's super simple, it's super effective, and if you use a Pixel with a Mac, for instance, this means you can just get things there. You don't have to worry about having to switch to an iPhone or switch away from an iPhone. This isn't available on the 9A, at least right now, making it another first for the 10A and the A series, and it could help potential switchers from ancient iPhones, the kind of people this phone is targeted at. They can basically still share files with friends and family and their devices pretty much seamlessly. Again, I do think this is a good user-focused change, not a fumble with that feature in particular. So looking at this more broadly, I've reeled off pretty much all of the new stuff that you'll find on the Google Pixel 10a. It's arguably the smallest ever update to a Pixel phone, at least since last year, making it an even smaller refinement than the 9 to the Pixel 10. My concern is this feels like Google potentially, let's say, pumping the brakes on what is a usually solid A series and a phone that we actually tend to recommend to more people than the regular Pixel series. I can 100% see why people think this could be a bad device, but we haven't really had enough time to form any truly definitive thoughts. I'm just trying to lay out the facts here to determine if they fumbled ahead of time. While it does look the exact same from afar, I do think the 10a does have some important changes. However, we're kind of almost certain that it will provide practically the same experience as the 9a, given it has the same core internals. So in that regard, you could still argue that Google has dropped the ball or fumbled this time around, especially by keeping things modest. Let's zoom out more broadly for a second though. I think at $500, ultimately this phone isn't for the big time tech fan, the kind of you who are interested in this kind of content. It's for the normies, for your mum, your dad, your brother, your sister, that kind of people. The people who just want a phone that works, the kind of people that might be using an old iPhone and it's running out of battery, and you want to get them something that's going to be, A, look good, work well, have a good camera, all that kind of stuff. And at least on paper, I do think this should suffice. It probably won't win any awards. It'll just do the job. And with that context, it is probably fine. It does feel very, very safe, and it's the safest phone probably that Google has ever released. It does also help create a clearer segregation between the flagship Pixel lineups and the A series. That could really help push someone to the Pixel 10 over this, especially as there's discounts over that almost half-a-year-old phone now. And there's also a clear case for the Pixel 9a, which has had its own discounts over the past 4 or 5 months, making it a much better buy as a result. That said, I do think the Pixel 10 is going to be better for most people for a lot of other reasons. We will dive deeper into this over the coming weeks, but I want to ask you what you think. Do you think Google has really fumbled this year with the Pixel 10a and specifically the A series? Let me know in the comments section. Now I've given you as much information as I humanly can. Cheers for watching though, and I'm fascinated to hear what you think. As always though, I'll speak to you later.